This is the second of two Panoply tutorials. In this second tutorial, I'm going to just briefly show you a few additional things that you will probably find useful for your projects. Um, to start with, this is where we left off in the last tutorial where I had created a map, and this was an anomaly map. So it was a difference between two data sets. But in this particular example, the data set that we used only included values for the annual averages. The data that you'll get from your simulations includes more information than just annual averages. I've loaded two additional data sets here. So the bottom two data sets here are the ones that we looked at previously. I've loaded two additional data sets into Panoply here. First of all, this is another data set that includes latitude by longitude variables, in other words, map variables for another simulation. When I open this one up, you will see more variables than we had in our previous example, and this will be more typical of the type of data sets that you receive when your simulations are done. And one of the things I wanted to show you, when you get your data sets, let's look at surface air temperature again. I'm just going to double click on surface air temperature from this data set. And I'm going to, again, use the defaults to just make a map from this particular simulation. And again, we see a Robinson projection for surface air temperature for this particular simulation. The difference here is that this data set not only includes annual averages, but it also includes data for every month of the simulation, excuse me, as well as seasonal averages. If you look up at the plot controls here, when you're in the arrays tab of the plot controls, you'll notice that below array one here, you see something additional that wasn't in the previous example. So in this data set for surface air temperature, there are 17 different arrays within the data set. The default is to just go to the first value in the first array in the data set is for January. This is the average January for this particular time period in this data set. But I could also, if I scroll down here, I can, at the bottom, I can see the annual average. So now this is the annual average for that particular simulation. Or you'll notice there are also four seasonal averages there. So this would be like a Northern Hemisphere fall, September, October, November, or summer, June, July, August, or spring or winter, December, January, February being the winter season. Or you can look at any individual month. So there are 17 arrays in each data set. So 12 months, four seasons, and one annual average. So that's something that we didn't have in the previous uh, example that I showed, which had a data set with only annual averages in it. The other thing that I wanted to show you was I'll just close this map down. Um, I've loaded another data set here back at the data browser here. This is a latitude by height data set. And don't get overwhelmed by this. There's a lot of variables here that you will not need, but all of the basic types of variables that you would probably want to look at in a latitude by height um, in latitude by height are included in here. You just have to search through it a little more. You'll see some things like specific humidity, the temperature, cloud cover, way down at the bottom here, the zonal winds. So if you plot one of these latitude by height variables, I'll just double click on zonal wind. You're again presented with um, different ways that you can look at this, but the default is what you'll want to use most of the time. So when this window opens up, you're basically set the way you want it, and you create this map. And now what you're viewing is an array of data that's presented in latitude on the x-axis from southern hemisphere on the left to northern hemisphere on the right, and height. And height is in pressure units. You can probably pretty quickly see what this is showing. You're looking at the zonal wind for a control run here, and what you're seeing are the two zonal jets. So your scale shows that this is the zonal wind in tenths of a meter per second. And you can see the core of each jet in the southern hemisphere and in the northern hemisphere from this simulation. If we quickly, I'll close this one down. If we go up and we look at the temperature, so here's the temperature as a latitude by height variable, and we choose the default, and you can see the latitude by height distribution of temperature for the Earth. So these are zonal averages of the represented as latitude by height. And again, no surprise here, right? Warmer in the tropics at the surface, cooler as you get towards the poles, and cooler as you go up in the atmosphere. And I think that's enough there. We don't need to make any more out of this particular explanation. Between the two Panoply tutorials, that should provide you with everything you need to know to make all the visualizations you need for your projects.